The infamous attacks on the World Trade Center and Pentagon are known as the 9/11 attacks, but the motives, planning, and preparations for these attacks began years before that day. Several sources warned of a major attack that was in the works from al-Qaeda, but unfortunately there were many missed opportunities to utilize the forewarnings from these sources. Moreover, there was an unhealthy power struggle that existed between the CIA and FBI, so both agencies withheld information from each other rather than coordinating a proper defense strategy. The CIA actually blocked the FBI from investigating al-Qaeda's previous attacks of the USS Cole. It's a shame that two agencies employed by the same nation failed to cooperate at the worst possible time. This report will inform you not specifically about the hijacking preparations or missed opportunities before that fateful day, but instead how our airport security personnel and policies completely failed to protect the general public. If the given technology and detection systems were properly utilized, it is very likely that September 11, 2001 would have been just another usual day in our nation's history. Many warnings of a major attack were given to the United States, including from Mossad and intelligence agencies from Arab countries. NSA also picked up signs of a major attack. In fear of American retaliation, the Taliban Foreign Minister Wakil Ahmed Matawakil told the United Nations of a devastating attack on the U.S. By May 2001, nearly all of the hijackers were already in the United States. Tom Wilshire of the CIA knew Nawaf al-Hazmi was already in the U.S., along with Khalid and Mihar, who already had a U.S. visa. Wilshire asked permission to disclose this information to the FBI, but never heard back about his request. Some CIA investigators had a meeting with the FBI on June 11th to show the FBI some revealing pictures taken of the terrorists. The I-49 squad wanted to know more about the pictures, such as who was in them, when they were taken, and where they were taken, but the CIA would not give up such information. Steve Bongart had just returned from Pakistan with a list of about 30 al-Qaeda operatives that were not to be allowed in the country, including Mihar. Bongart asked the CIA supervisor to provide a date of birth or passport number to go with Mihar's name in order to stop him, but the CIA would not disclose that information. There was also one more important picture of Khalid that would have shown connections to the men to the al-Qaeda attacks. The CIA never showed this picture to the FBI. In mid-August, a flight school in Minnesota contacted the FBI about suspicious behavior of this student Messiah. The FBI determined he was an Islamic radical and potential hijacker. The FBI wanted to examine Messiah's laptop, where they would have found that he was receiving money from Ramzi bin al-Shib, but were denied access because they had no probable cause. Maggie Gillespie, FBI analyst, asked the INS, Customs, and the FBI to put Mihar and Hamzi on their watch list. The I-49 squad was ordered to locate Mihar, but no criminal agents were allowed to be involved with the case, even though they have more access to resources pertaining to al-Qaeda. The FBI investigators that were ordered to locate the two men could not find them. There was a technology known as CAPPS set up to screen people of interest, and it actually identified many of the hijackers before they carried out their plans. One hijacker, Muhammad Atta, who attended flight training in South Florida, was selected in Portland, Maine while on his way to meet his hijacking team in Boston's Logan Airport, where another 3 of his 4 hijacking team members were also selected by the same system in Boston before they all were allowed to successfully board American Airlines Flight 11. Unfortunately, security rules were not strict enough at the time, so all 5 of these men were allowed to proceed with their travel. The only consequence for those selected by CAPPS was that their checked baggage was kept off of the plane, not the passengers. American Flight 11 departed Logan Airport in Boston at 7:59 a.m., and an attempt by air traffic controllers to communicate with the flight crew was not acknowledged until around 8:14. Then, the transponder was shut off at 8:21, further degrading the tracking information available to ATC about the aircraft. Around 8:19, one of the flight attendants, Betty Young, used an airphone to contact the American Airlines Southeastern Reservationist Office in Cary, North Carolina. During this 25-minute call, she reported the events that were unfolding aboard the aircraft. Hijackers had stabbed 2 of the other flight attendants and a passenger, and sprayed some kind of mace or pepper spray, making it hard to breathe. The hijackers informed passengers that they had a bomb, forced the majority or all passengers to the rear of the plane, and the cockpit was obviously under distress since there was no response from the pilots. By 8:25, air traffic control was aware of the situation because one of the hijackers inadvertently transmitted a radio message intended for only the passengers aboard the flight. From that moment, there was obvious proof of the hijacking. It took approximately 13 minutes to alert military personnel. and coordination for a response was very slow and unproductive due to the lack of necessary information. Another flight attendant, Amy Sweeney, was in contact with the American Flight Service office in Boston beginning around 8:25. After several minutes of both flight attendants secretly reporting what they were witnessing aboard the flight, communication with them was cut off. Then, at 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. The two dispatched F-15 fighter jets were not in the air until 7 minutes after the impact. Unfortunately, they were also grounded shortly thereafter, and this terminated their capabilities for destroying the second aircraft heading toward the South Tower. Another 5 hijackers boarded United Airlines Flight 175 at Logan Airport without any CAPPS selections nor resistance from security screeners. One of these 5 was Marwan al-Shihai, who also attended flight training in the U.S. At 8:14 a.m., the flight departed from Boston. One of the pilots had a lost radio transmission at 8:42 in an effort to inform ATC of a suspicious transmission he heard coming from American Flight 11. The flight's transponder code was changed at 8:47. According to passenger eyewitnesses communicating by cell phones, the 2 pilots were stabbed to death by the hijackers. The attack was similar to the American Flight 11 attack with the use of mace, relocating passengers to the rear of the plane, and the threat of a bomb. Around 8:52, ATC realized that the plane was off its normal path and tried unsuccessfully to make contact with the crew. At 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 crashed into the South Tower of the World Trade Center. At that moment, military defense personnel were notified of the hijacking, way too late to dispatch a response. Millions of people across the U.S. watched in disbelief as they now realized that our nation was helplessly under attack. Washington Dulles Airport in Virginia was the next staging area for yet another 5 hijackers. They were all screened and identified as threats, 3 by CAPPS and 2 by the customer service rep at the check-in counter. However, all were permitted to proceed with travel, so they boarded American Airlines Flight 77 without much resistance. There was video evidence that showed the security screener at the terminal performing a poor job of checking 2 of the men after they set off the metal detectors. Hani Hanjour was one of these hijackers, and he had reportedly received refresher flight training in Arizona, and then he continued further training in Paterson, New Jersey. The aircraft was in the air at 8:20, and the final routine radio transmission was made at 8:51. The aircraft began to turn away from its normal route around 8:54, and then shortly afterwards the transponder was shut off. ATC and airline dispatchers repeatedly attempted without success to contact the aircraft by radio transmissions. Passengers aboard the aircraft used cell phones to call family and inform them of hijacking by men using box cutters and that they were all moved to the rear of the plane. Due to confusion and technical problems with the radar systems, the aircraft went undetected for 36 minutes. The military personnel were not notified of the missing aircraft until 9:34. At 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon. In Newark, another 4 hijackers made their way onto United Airlines Flight 93. Although one of the men was selected by the CAPPS system, he was authorized to proceed with travel along with 3 of his team members. Ziad Jarrah, who had attended flight training in the U.S., was one of the hijackers. The flight departed Liberty Airport in Newark at 8:42 and proceeded at a normal path and altitude for around 46 minutes. Then, shortly after the flight's last normal radio transmission at 9:27, the plane was obviously under duress since it made a sudden 700-foot drop in altitude. Unlike the preceding 3 hijackings that day, this one was obviously not carried out as planned. In addition to the long flight delay, the culprits were met with immediate resistance from the flight crew, which was already informed of the hijackings that morning. Once the hijackers took control, they forced passengers to the rear of the plane and informed them of a bomb aboard the aircraft. After several calls by passengers to loved ones and authorities on the ground, there was widespread knowledge of the previous attacks on buildings in our nation. The hijackers were likely overpowered by determined passengers who did not want their hijackers to succeed in hitting another intended target. At 10:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 93 crashed into an open field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Although not all of the hijackers were selected by the CAPPS system or airport personnel, many of them were. With the help of the CAPPS system and the airport employees, we could have possibly stopped at least one of the hijackings. The FBI and the CIA also could have worked together to fight the attack before it started. There were nearly 3,000 deaths on this day, and it will forever be remembered as a tragedy on American soil.